guys, Miss Davis here, back for day 24. 24 of the Anne Frank series. Can you believe we've been together that long? Oh my. So today I'm going to pick up right where we left off yesterday. Not too much ado about it, except to say that yesterday we were talking about the highs and the lows. And so, how Anne was going from one moment of sort of like riding on hope and optimism and then the next moment sort of like full of doubt and worry, and that sort of theme really continues today. They are getting into some tight spots. I mean, the war is raging on. It is March of 1944. It's getting late in the war, and things are starting to get complicated. And so there's a lot about that today, about how the complications that the war is causing. I can identify with that a little bit today in my coronavirus quarantine, and that it's been going on, certainly not for years, although today it kind of feels like it. Oh my. And things are starting, I'm starting to think about a lot of what if this and what if that, and that's a thing that Anne's kind of going through. Sorry, my hair, oh my goodness gracious, my hair. That Anne's sort of going through in this set of journal entries today. Things are starting to get inconvenient and desperate in certain situations, and in other situations, it's just like a big anxiety, worry of what if this, what if that. So that's kind of what's going on. Anne's experiencing kind of a low today, and so that happens, and that's true to life in all kinds of walks of life. So without further ado, let's jump right in. We're going to pick up with the journal entry dated Tuesday, the 14th of March, 1944. Dear Kitty, perhaps it would be entertaining for you, though not in the least for me, to hear what we are going to eat today. As the charwoman is at work downstairs, I'm sitting on the Van Dan's table at the moment. I have a handkerchief, soaked in some good scent, bought before we came here, over my mouth and held against my nose. You won't gather much from this, so let's begin at the beginning. The people from whom we obtained food coupons have been caught, so we just have our 5 ration cards and no extra coupons and no fats. As both Meep and Kufius are ill, Eli hasn't had any time to do any shopping. So the atmosphere is dreary and dejected, and so is the food. From tomorrow we shall not have a scrap of fat, butter, or margarine left. We can't have fried potatoes to save bread for breakfast any longer, so we have porridge instead, and Mrs. Van Dan thinks we're starving. We have bought some full cream milk under the counter. Our supper today consists of a hash made from kale, which has been preserved in a barrel, hence the precautionary measure with the handkerchief. It's incredible how kale can stink when it's a year old. The smell in the room is a mixture of bad plums, strong preservatives, and rotten eggs. Ugh, the mere thought of eating that muck makes me feel sick. Added to this, our potatoes are suffering from such peculiar diseases that out of 2 buckets of pomace de terre, one whole one ends up on the stove. We assume ourselves by searching for all different kinds of diseases, and have come to the conclusion that they range from cancer and smallpox to measles. Oh no, it's no joke to be in hiding during the 4th year of the war. If only the whole rotten business was over. Quite honestly, I wouldn't care so much about the food if it were only more pleasant. Here, in other ways, there's the rub. This tedious existence is beginning to make us all touchy. The following are the views of the 5 grown-ups on the present situation. Mrs. Van Dan, the job as queen of the kitchen lost its attraction a long time ago. It's dull to sit and do nothing, so I go back to my cooking again. Still, I have to complain that it's impossible to cook without any fats, and all these nasty smells make me sick. Nothing but ingratitude and rude remarks do I get in return for my services. I'm always the black sheep, always the guilty one. Moreover, according to me, very little progress is being made in the war, and in the end the Germans will still win. I'm afraid we're going to starve, and if I'm in a bad mood, I scold everyone. Mr. Van Dan, I must smoke and smoke and smoke, and then the food. The political situation and Curly's moods don't seem so bad. Curly is a darling wife. But if he hasn't had anything to smoke, then nothing is right, and this is what one hears. I'm getting ill. We don't live well enough. I must have meat. Frightfully stupid person, my Curly. After this, a terrific quarrel is sure to follow. Mr. Frank, food is not very important, but I would love a slice of rye bread now. I feel so terribly hungry. If I were Mrs. Van Dan, I would have put a stop to Mr. Van Dan's everlasting smoking a long time ago. But now I must definitely have a cigarette because my nerves are getting the better of me. The English make a lot of mistakes, but the war is still progressing. I must have a chat and be thankful I'm not in Poland. Mr. Frank, everything's all right. I don't require anything. Take it easy. We've ample time. Give me my potatoes, and then I will keep my mouth shut. Put some of my rations on one side for Ely. The political situation is very promising. I'm extremely optimistic. Mr. Dussel, I must get my task for today. Everything must be finished on time. Political situation outstanding, and it's impossible that we'll be caught. Yours, Anne. So again, she's kind of going over like the different roles of the adults in her life. Peter's two parents, her two parents, and Mr. Dussel, who all are taking this very differently. But I mean, it must be just terribly awful to have, the potatoes that you've got in barrels, only a third of them are disease free, and like you got to be thinking about what happens when the potatoes run out, and also like the bit about the kale, the year-old kale that they've got to eat today, and no butter or any like oil or anything to make that more palatable. I mean, it must be getting just terribly tedious. I'm still very lucky to be able to go to the grocery store and to replenish my supplies and to not have to worry about, like food getting a mold or a rot and like wasting away while I can't eat it all in one day. And I mean, that's a lot on somebody's mind. So I guess that makes me feel lucky that I'm not quite in that situation and appreciative of the things that I do have, grateful for what I do have today. Next journal entry is Wednesday, March 15th, 1944. Dear Kitty, Phew! Oh dear, released from the somber scenes for a moment. Today I hear nothing but if this or if that should happen, then we're going to be in difficulties. If he or she should become ill, then we'll be completely isolated. And then if Einfin, I expect you know the rest, at least I presume you know the secret annexers well enough by this time to be able to guess the trend of their conversations. The reason for all this if is that Mr. Krayler has been called up to go digging. Ely has a streaming cold and will probably have to stay at home tomorrow. Meep hasn't fully recovered from her flu yet, and Kufius has had such a bad hemorrhage of the stomach that he lost consciousness. What a tale of woe. The warehouse people are getting a free day tomorrow. Ely can stay at home, then the door will remain locked, and we shall have to be as quiet as mice so that the neighbors don't hear us. Hank is coming to visit the deserted ones at 1 o'clock, playing the role of zookeeper, as it were. For the first time in ages he told us something about the great wide world this afternoon. You should have seen the 8 of us sitting around him. It looked exactly like a picture of grandmother telling a story. He talked 19 to the dozen to his grateful audience about food, of course, and then Meep's doctor and everything that we asked about. Doctor, he said, don't talk to me about the doctor. I rang him up this morning, had his assistant on the phone and asked for a prescription for the flu. The reply was that I could come and get the prescription any time between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. If you have a very bad attack of flu, the doctor comes to the telephone himself and says, put your tongue out, say ah. I can hear all right that your throat is inflamed. I'll write a prescription for your order from the chemist. Goodbye. And that's that. Fine practice, that. Run by telephone only. Oh, but I don't want to criticize the doctors. After all, a person has but 2 hands, and in these days there's an abundance of patients and very few doctors to cope with them. Still, we wouldn't help laughing when Hank repeated the telephone conversation to us. I can just imagine what a doctor's waiting room must look like nowadays. One doesn't look down on panel patients anymore, but on the people with minor ailments and thinks, hi you, what are you doing here? End of the line, please. Urgent cases have priority. Yours, Anne. Okay, so this journal entry seems very present day, thinking about all the ways that doctors are doctoring. One, when they're completely overwhelmed with patients. And, the coronavirus patients, they sure have to get top priority right now. And so what happens with the patients who have other ailments or other things, broken bones or, other like long-term like pre-existing conditions, long-term illnesses, things like that. And they're doing unusual things like teleconferencing for doctor's visits, and they're not there with the patient, but like, oh, let me see from the webcam, kind of like I'm doing right now, and oh yes, this is what you need. I'll write you the prescription. So It seems like all very hurried. So that's really seeming like a big similarity to me today, that the pressure on doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals during the end game stages of World War II are probably a lot similar to kinds of things and pressures and stresses that are on the medical community during this crisis. And it makes me very grateful and thankful and thinking about the people in the medical field right now, how they are sacrificing. And again, just like the rest of us, teachers and students who are in completely uncharted waters, who aren't sure what to do, they have never experienced anything like this before either. And so it's a lot of pressure on a person. So again, I guess gratitude and thankfulness for the people who are on the front lines of the healthcare industry today. Makes me think of that for sure. Next journal entry, Thursday the 16th of March, 1944. Dear Kitty, the weather is lovely, superb. I can't describe it. I'm going up to the attic in a minute. Now I know why I'm so much more restless than Peter. He has his own room where he can work, dream, think, and sleep. I'm shoved about from one corner to another. I hardly spend any time in my double room, and yet it's something I long for so much. That's the reason, too, why I so frequently escape to the attic. There, and with you, I can be myself for a while. Just a little while. Still, I don't want to bemoan after myself. On the contrary, I want to be brave. Thank goodness the others can't tell what my inward feelings are, except that I'm growing cooler towards Mummy daily. I'm not so affectionate to Daddy, and I don't tell Margot a single thing. I'm completely closed up. Above all, I must remain my outward reserve. No one must know that war still reigns incessantly within. War between desire and common sense. The latter has won up until now. Yet will the former prove to be the stronger of the two? Sometimes I fear that it will, and sometimes I long for it to be. Oh, it's so terribly difficult never to say anything to Peter. But I know that the first to begin must be he. There's so much I want to say and do. I've lived it all in my dreams. It's so hard to find that yet another day has gone by and none of it comes true. Yes, Kitty, Anne is a crazy child, but I do live in crazy times and under still crazier circumstances. But still, the brightest spot of all is that at least I can write down my thoughts and feelings. Otherwise, I would be absolutely stifled. I wonder what Peter thinks about all these things. I keep hoping that I can talk about it to him one day. There must be something he has guessed about me, because he certainly can't love the outer Anne, which is the one he knows so far. How can he, who loves peace and quiet, have any liking for all my bustle and din? Can he possibly be the first and only one to have looked through my concrete armor? And will it take him long to get there? Isn't there an old saying that love often springs from pity, or that the two go hand in hand? Is that the case with me too, because I'm often just as sorry for him as I am for myself? I really don't honestly know how to begin, and however would he be able to when he finds talking so much more difficult than I do? If only I could write to him, then at least I would know that he would grasp what I want to say, because it's so terribly difficult to put into words. Yours, Anne. And again, like we talked about yesterday, the up and the down and the ebb and the flow of, life. It's just how it is sometimes. And, you know, she's right. She is living in an absolutely just incredible circumstance. Um, she says, I'm a crazy child and I live in crazy times and under still crazier circumstances. So, don't we all, dear? And we might feel that way sometimes, but we're not. We're just human after all. So, again, as I said yesterday, dealing with life's ups and downs, and this too shall pass, and it won't be that way forever. So even though the food situation and the doctor situation and the Peter situation seems to be, at a low point right now, better days are coming, and we just have to keep believing that and hoping for it. So those are my thoughts for the day today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great one.